Okay, so it's 5 past, so we can start. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for being here with us. We are very happy to have all of you here, as well as Sameer Rahman. And we're going to talk about enterprise data maturity. A few words about the Tesseract Academy organizing this event. I'm the CEO of the Tesseract Academy. And the mission of the Tesseract Academy is to help decision makers implement and understand technology faster, easier, and better. We work with companies all sizes. We've worked with many startups, but also with quite a few corporates. And we specialize primarily in data science, AI, and blockchain. But we also offer many services in what we call the soft part of data science, things like data strategy, discovery of new data products, but also we're doing some things related to the blockchain space, primarily tokenomics and architecture. We have a network of experts. Sameer is one of them, and we organize regular events on anything that a decision maker would need to know in the space of technology, like data science, project management of AI, new trends in technology, metaverse, fundraising, AI ethics, data strategy, etc. And you'll find on our webpage lots of free content. You're also going to find lots of courses. Some of them are free as well. And we're constantly organizing events and workshops. Talking about myself, I've been in the space of data science and AI for more than 10 years. Or not only, I'm the CEO of the Tesseract Academy, but I'm also an academic affiliated with a few different institutions. And I've written up a book on the topic. If you send me an email, I'm more than happy to share the book with you in a PDF format called the Decision Maker's Handbook to Data Science, which talks about some of the topics that we're going to discuss about today with Sameer. And here are some of the testimonials of people that have worked with us in the past. These are some solo entrepreneurs, and these are some of the bigger organizations that have worked with us, like Vodafone, Lloyd's Maritime Academy, or the US Navy. So as I mentioned, we run many programs, and we have a variety of services, from consulting services to software development, to also coaching and courses. So make sure to visit our website to learn more, and also shoot me an email to get a copy of my book. So today we're very lucky to have with us Sameer, who has been voted as one of the top 100 data leaders and influencers in the UK for 2 consecutive years. He has more than 20 years of experience in data science and data strategy, and he's also the CEO of Data.net, helping organizations drive commercial value out of their data. So Sameer is going to present to us his framework for data maturity. It's a framework he's used many times in the past to assess the data maturity of organizations. The presentation will run for about 20-25 minutes. And then after that, there's going to be a Q&A session and let's say 10 minutes of discussion. So if you have any questions or anything, any topic you'd like us to focus on, then feel free to write in the chat, and then we can address this at the end of the presentation. So that being said, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll hand over to Sameer.
Okay, thank you, Stylinos. Good. Well, I hope everybody can see my screen now, which I'm sharing the data strategy template. So let me put it on full screen. So first of all, well, thank you everybody for joining us. It's going to be, hopefully, it'll be an interactive talk. It's good to know that you're all coming from a different background and see data from a different lens. So before I start, I think a couple of key things about me. So one of the quick story is how I got into data. So my original degree was in computer science. After that, I decided computer science is not for me because it's not going to change the world. So I went into doing masters in business. And when I was doing my master's in business, I was doing my dissertation or my research work was on Tesco Club Card, working with their data conglomerate dunnhumby. And that is where the penny dropped for me. And that is where I realized that the application of data in various forms, certainly in the form of a club card for Tesco in particular, can really change operating models, business models, and commercial models. And if it can change for a behemoth like Tesco, it can change for everybody else. So really now I will be talking about data strategy, but not as a data leader, but as a business leader. And it's very important to realize that, because data can change businesses. Data strategy should be a fundamental part of a business strategy, or linked with the business strategy. and the board of any business should really not be supporting it, but really be the proponent and the cheerleader for it. Because without that, very few businesses can evolve and even in some cases survive. And that's a quite an important thing. Okay, so having said that, we'll cover off quite a few things: the principles around data strategy, the sort of maturity, the refinement. So the pillars, data strategy. You might have had experience of different consultants, in-house people who have written data strategies, or you might have written some of them yourself. So it's always an open question of what is data strategy, what does it entail, what is the scope of it. And again, there is no right or wrong answer. It's very contextual in terms of what is the question being asked, what is the maturity of organization for which you are writing the data strategy, who is your end stakeholder, and what do you see as the right fit to include within that data strategy. Typically, the framework that I'll be presenting today will involve five things. One is data refinement. Point one. Point two, it will be the architecture, how the data flows through the organization. Point three will be around people, capabilities, and skills. Point four will be around business intelligence, analytics, and data science. Again, dependent on what how much mature the organization is. If it's less mature, then you'll talk about how to embed business and BI practices. If they are further into maturity, then you'll talk about analytics. And if they are quite mature, then you'll talk about data science, including machine learning and AI. And then obviously the fundamental part is how to manage and govern the data. So really those five will be the main talking point. And in my view and in my experience, any good data strategy, irrespective of the maturity of the organization, should cover those five aspects at the very minimal. Okay. So that's that. So what are the principles? Obviously, all of us would have heard around the often strategy, people, technology, process, data. So again, I said data, we are talking about data strategy, but then data strategy links to what are the processes within the business. Data strategy almost always have some part in kind of technology, what technology drives your business. It obviously touches on the people and skills, as I said, and it has to be aligned with the overall business strategy, and it has to have the CEO and the stakeholder mandate um, for you to write the data strategies. Those are kind of tick points. And the principles, again, I don't want to talk all of that in detail. Some of it are highlighted in bold. It has to be owned by a senior stakeholder, so there has to be seniority in terms of ownership. The point that data is a business problem or an opportunity, whichever way you see, is quite important. Often it's delegated to a data team, but as I mentioned initially, we should be seeing ourselves as data leaders uh, rather than business leaders rather than data leaders. And quality is better than quantity, and this is something I'll touch on. I mean, we've all those talks about big data and things like that. Big data is good. The more data you have generally is good, but then you don't uh, sacrifice your quality over quantity in terms of there's lots of things you can do with so-called small data or with a statistical significant representative data set. So the effort in getting more and more data there's an opportunity cost to it of utilizing the data that you've got as long as it's representative. And it's with data, it's again, my favorite quote always is, good enough is the new perfect. It might chime with you, it might not chime with you, but that is the philosophy that I work with. If I go for perfection within data, the goalposts are always moving. The industry is quite dynamic. It's a fast-paced thing. So anything to do with perfection, there's a lot of opportunity cost and investment required. So I stick to the philosophy of good enough is a new perfect, certainly with start small, speed up, and scale fast approach. Okay, so those are the principles. And again, driving business value. Again, I talk about business leadership and business value is around the principles of data has always been around how do you automate for process efficiencies? How do you democratize so that everybody deals with some part in data? How do you monetize? How do you visualize the data for senior stakeholders? How do you make everybody self-serve themselves, certainly within their own functions? and how do you optimize in terms of the use of data, optimize the business value of data, optimize the marketing performance and the budget. So there's a lot of optimizations. Those are the six key kind of business value I would hinge my data strategy on. The one thing, again, going back to my business leadership pivot, the commercial driver is very important. I think some of you who might have presented some of the technology business cases or technology roadmaps and planning sessions to senior stakeholders, data and technology really is always seen as a utility or an enabler, and it is. It is a utility. It is an enabler for organization to really build on. But my pitch has always been that it's a commercial driver. It has, if we don't have a pound sign associated with the use of data, and I do understand it's quite a difficult one in some cases, but I would really make you think around that. I mean, most of the business cases that I've written, there is some direct or indirect relation to data driving commercial performance, and I talked about monetization. So I would really, my data strategy is always pitch data strategy as a commercial entity, as a business value entity, rather than a utility and an enabler. And that is something I'll leave you to think about after this call. So starting off with the first step I do when I write a data strategy, the process is always starts off with discovery sessions and workshops where I get to know the business first. So I don't really get into straight away into what is your data, what systems you use, and all that. It's very much about understanding the business, the product, and your commercial model first. And I do get a lot of pushback saying, why would you understand how do we make money? Why would you understand all our propositions? My simple pushback is if I don't understand where you're getting, each one of them is giving us data. And if I don't understand your sources of how the data is coming through, you will never have a good data strategy. So and then it's a series of workshops around technical workshops and things like that. But it always starts off with the board level questioning around, tell me about your business, tell me about your product, tell me about your proposition, tell me about your plans, and how would you want your business to scale and grow. The first step always is a playback and kind of a penny drop moment and most of you might have seen this in some shape or form. But for me, it's always been a case of where are you? So the blue spider diagram is around current, where this particular organization is. And the IDS is the immediate data strategy. Where do they want to get to within the next 12 months? And again, depending on the organization size and pace, it can be 6 months, it can be 18 months. And TDS is a target data strategy. Where do you ultimately want to be in 3 years time or 5 years time, depending on that. So the first bit is always after doing my diligence, my workshops, my discovery sessions, I would always play back where they are in the journey. And then on the right side, there'll be a little bit of commentary, which I'll go into a lot more detail, but a little bit of commentary explaining why I think you are at that particular stage. Okay. So this normally starts off a lot of conversation with my clients, with organizations that you work with. And I haven't been, just to let you know my background, I haven't been a consultant. I mean, of the 22 years I worked with data, I've probably been a consultant for 8 years out of those. And the rest of them I've been employed as in a permanent employee of particular companies. I've worked both client side and agency side. And the approach that I'm describing works both as a consultant or whether you're looking to write your own data strategy or guide somebody writing a data strategy. So once I've given them the playback on where you are, then I come pick each individual section one by one. As I talked about, there were 5 sections. I'll talk about each one of them individually. So I start off with data refinement, which basically covers off in layman terms is data quality and how good your data is. I think data strategy, presenting back the data strategy, is as much about self-realization and education as it is about guidance. So the iceberg is a concept that I've used and has worked quite a bit for me in terms of what you see at the top, a good quality data. It's not that easy to get to where you want to get to. You need to have good governance. You have to have good master data practices. You have to have good data quality, your cleansing, your completeness of data, and the accuracy. So again, this slide is more of an education piece to the ends, to a business end stakeholder, to say you don't get quality of data right by flicking a switch. There's lots of groundwork that you have to do, what you can't see beneath the iceberg. Okay. And then every section then has got, there's three aspects to every section. Every section, I play back to them where they are. So the maturity in that section. So how good they are at data refinement or data quality. Then I tell them why they are where they are. And then the third bit is the most important bit. What do they need to do to get to a stage where they need to get to? So this slide, for example, is in this particular client's case, they were at a stage 2. So data, there's a lot of manual attempts to resolve duplicates. They didn't have enterprise-wide data standardization. They didn't have a metadata approach. They didn't have consolidated data. So essentially, that was the reason. And then again, this is the second part, why the organization was at that stage, basically. And you can read some of them. Basically, the highlight was the data wasn't good quality. The systems, there was no enterprise level single source of truth. The processes were not standardized. The feedback, there was no ownership. There's no feedback loop. There was no local checks. So again, it was kind of a messy management process, data management process. And then it's a case of, okay, so what do you want to do? Obviously, there's a lot more. There are probably 4 or 5 slides that I normally play back on a detailed level of what do you want to do to get where you want to. For the interest of these 20-25 minutes, I'm not going to give you all of that, but really, the summary that I give them is, this is where you are now, this is where you want to get to next, and what steps. So for example, you need a data catalog to understand what data exists. First of all, you need a data quality or audit. You need to set up a master data framework group, so on and so forth. Agree data standardization and quality rules. Terminology is a big thing that I come across. Some people will say segmentation, some people will say personas, some people will say profiles, and they all mean the same thing, but it's replicated in the database. There's no standardized terminology or definition. So again, those kind of things create a lot of confusion on the database and within business. And then the next, in terms of what do you want to do next, which is a 3 to 5 year period. Okay, and similar thing on data architecture. Again, the philosophy is the same. Education, where are they in terms of maturity? Why are they where they are? How do they want to get to where they want to get to? So again, education pieces. Uh, Obviously, this is a summarized diagram. I explain a lot in terms of why do you need a connected infrastructure at the bottom, because your strategy won't be connected. If your strategy is in you connected infrastructure, basically then gives you the right information, which then helps you make the right decisions. It helps you connect the business, so you're not duplicating work, and you've got a single source of truth. You're not wasting your time going pillar to post just for finding the truth. And then you've got a connected strategy. So that's the education piece. Again, the maturity framework. How do you move from this? So in this case, the client was a very foundational level. The architecture framework did not exist. Data was not connected. There were little provisions of storage and so on and so forth. And then you come on to, okay, then how do I connect? What is the main principles? Your architecture should cater for change. It should be secure. It should cater for high velocity of data, high variety of data. It should be integrated, and it should enable your BI and data science practices. And this is the actual diagram that I give back, really. I mean, some people might say it's a role of an architect or a solutions architect, but I think a data information flow diagram is quite important. And sometimes I really find it's a crucial part of the strategy that you should play back. So obviously, this is a particular client where I show them this should be your data coming in. This is how you should set up the data warehouse. This is how you should connect to your CRM and operational platforms. This is how you should connect to your data lake, so on and so forth. Okay. And then again, key things to consider while building your architecture. So what data sits in what systems, how do you go about that? And obviously I do a roadmap to give all that back to the client, but for the purpose of this, I'm just touching on the main points. What integrations, how do you use the APIs? Do the REST APIs exist or not? Is there native APIs or not? Is the data how is the data sync happening? Is it timing element of it? Is it real time or batch processing? And which platforms are the best suited? So this is all these questions I give back as a part of data strategy. Then people skills and capabilities, again, education, the first piece, what are the hard skills and the soft skills? Again, it's quite contextual. So in this particular client's case, or hypothetically say, okay, data management and governance, you need a data quality person, you need a data visualization person, and you need a leader to write data strategy. But again, it's quite contextual. It will depend. And then soft skills, which are equally, if not more important. And then for this particular client, it's a case of, okay, within the boundaries, what does my team look like? So on the left are more around people who they had. On the right is people who did not have and didn't realize that they needed that. And then I go into a very detailed of all the skills that the client has on the role level, what should and the skills that they don't have in terms of how do they develop it. Do they have an existing resource? Can they train an existing resource? Do they need a new hire? Do they need a consultant or a part-time person? Or do they need to partner with somebody? So for data quality, for example, for data quality audit or cleansing and introduction of master data management processes, for example, in this case, they needed a partner. Uh, and so on and so forth. So again, it's quite a detail of single, and the red and amber suggest in this particular client how good or bad they were. It's typical RAG status. So it's in one diagram. It's quite a good way of showing to the client what they need. Somewhat scary, but still that's what our job to give them the right recommendations. And then organizational design of the data team. How do you plan? How do you build? How do you run? So what do you need in the first stage? You need, in this case, they needed the data and information architects to plan and scope out the new data and information architecture in detail. They needed the business analysts, they needed the data engineers, the governance people. Not that they had most of it, but that was the basics that they needed. Then to build on that infrastructure and laying the foundations, the skills that they needed to get them to the next level. And then obviously to run and to make them much more efficient and automate the machinery. Uh, Quite a few things needed to be done. So that's a clear summarized payback in terms of what they needed. So as I said, different organizations at different levels. So in this case, the organization did not even have a proper business intelligence framework. So there's no point recommending an analytics and a data science framework. As you can see, they were very much at data aware stage. They were not using the data properly. They didn't even know what data existed. So it's a very much, okay, what do you need within your data teams? How do you restructure your BI team? So some sort of recommendations in the structure. And with an eventual end game of, you need a data specialist, which is a centralized team, which then becomes the data, DCOE is the data community in terms of your operating community, and then they make the teams organizational aware. And again, a playback of a certain recommendations of, basically, this is what the reporting looked like on the left, but this is what I recommended to them in a much more detailed playback as to how the reporting should be connected, how the operational reporting should be connected to standard reporting, to dashboards that the senior management and head of was looking, to the balance scorecard, which was their executive reporting. And then this is more sort of tactical in terms of what do you do. So they were struggling with the Google Analytics, a tactical problem that they threw at me, which was not part of the data strategy, but then these are the quick wins that I play back as a part of data strategy. And again, as I said, this organization was very much at a descriptive stage, what happened. And then they moved, the next step was to make the move into diagnostic and whatnot. So that was architecture. And then on similar lines, you've got data management and governance, same concept. Where are they? They were between level 3 and level 4. So I kind of said, okay, you've got most of it at level 4, but to give you credit, you are using some of the practices which are quite advanced. So that's pretty good. A checklist of the policies. Do you have the bare minimum data policies that every organization of your size should have? And then I go into, again, the roadmap of, okay, phase 1, what do you need to do? What do you need to do in phase 2? And how do you build control and governance panels and more policies? And then again, the same stuff. You need to have a DPO assigned. They didn't have a DPO, but they did have a lot of personal data. Uh, Internal audits were taking place, but the external audit was not structured, and so on and so forth. So that was kind of the same, again, the same structure followed. For every section you get, as I said, you get an education piece back, you get the state of the art as is, you get the reasoning behind the as is, and the most important bit, you get the to be and what you need to do to be at the to be stage. And then it's always good to summarize. The question I always get is certainly from the CEOs, which are really my main target audience, is summarize the data strategy in one page. And tell me what I need to do in one page. So this is kind of one page citing the main actions. I do it on a Word document as well, in terms of one page data strategy, which I can showcase it to you if needed. But this is the main action points of one page. And then I revert back to where we started. How will that help achieve the principles that we set out and the business value criteria that we set out? So for example, the connected architecture will help you automate. Again, picking out still the integration of systems will help you self-serve. The refinement of data will help you optimize, and so on and so forth. And I always give back to their CTO, the most senior stakeholder, or the CIO in data. What should good look like? What is the end state after your target data strategy? So these are the key skills that you will have. This is what your data quality will look like. This is what your structure will look like, so on and so forth. What are the costs? And obviously, I can't share the cost with this particular client, but I do have a cost benefit analysis of the data strategy as well, which I appreciate. In some cases, the benefit is quite difficult because it's not a direct link, but we try to work with a client to figure out some sort of indirect link so that we can showcase the effects of this. So technology, new hires, and what are the revenue streams that it will drive? And in a very simple support, what is the current state and what is your future state? So you've got dispersed and dirty data. We want that to be high quality. You've got loosely held siloed systems. Again, you want a connected architecture, and so on and so forth. Last, but by no means the least, and probably one of the most important bit, which is missing, is senior level sponsorship. Again, going back to my original and the initial sort of pivot where I started, the data strategist is a business leader, apart from being a data leader, and their role is selling the values of data and the virtues of data to the board, being the cheerleader, and having the board and the executive team singing from the same hymn sheet, making them realize the value of data, making them realize that data is an investment center, not a cost center, and why it's an investment center. So the storytelling part of a data strategist and a data leader is equally important, if not more important. And I'm sure you all have come across, or most of you have come across in your professional life. So in summary, that is where I'll conclude, and I'll hand back to Stylinos for questions. But really, I would the end statement I would say is data is a business asset. It's treat that as a business value driver, as a commercial driver. The more we can put pound signs to what we are doing, the more we will be appreciated, acknowledged, the more the role of the data leaders will grow through the organization. And data is important for every part of the business, be it marketing, be it product management, be it architecture, the technology team, or the information management team. So I leave you with it, and obviously very happy to answer questions. So over to you, back to you, Stylinos.
Yeah, thank you, Sameer. Excellent presentation. A round of applause. Here's an applause emoji. And I believe we have a question coming from Cal. He's asking whether you have experience using new SaaS PaaS products that help a customer up-level the MDM governance or quality maturity.
I do not have a direct experience, Carl, so I'm sorry, but we can touch base. I've worked with a lot of MDM providers like Informatica and whatnot, and I can recommend a few, and most of them are SaaS products anyway, SaaS or PaaS products. So, but I haven't had, I mean, I am not a data quality specialist. My specialism really lie in data strategy and then implementing data science solutions. So I won't proclaim to be a data quality specialist.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
No, not at all.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for the presentation. Super helpful and informative. My question was more on like, because I've seen a lot of activity in the startup space in this, in all of the different areas of governance, MDM, quality, value associated with data. There's just so many new startups happening and products being created in that space. I'm just wondering if you're tracking any of these newer companies that help up-level a company's data strategy in some way. And it wasn't necessarily specific to data quality, but just new products and new companies that you've seen in this space that are interesting to you.
I think there's lots of there's again in different space. For example, one of the companies that I come across, ThoughtSpot, that's doing quite a great stuff in terms of data visualization. That is quite interesting. Where I had a demo and then I deployed it in one of the client organizations where it really is taking the natural language processing into data and combining that with data visualization, where you ask the question saying, tell me what months were the best for business performance, and as long as it connects it to your backend data, it's giving you a good graph to go back and create visualizations. Looker is another good one in terms of BI tools that I work with, which again uses a lot of good quality data really. So some of the data quality providers are doing good. Talent I work with, they are pretty good. Again, going back to your sort of initial sort of pivot around data quality, I worked with Talent before, and they're good, doing some exciting work on the data quality side of things. So there are providers, but it's really horses for courses. I work with Data Robot. I don't know, it's a US-based company. Again, they are big into data science, and they kind of operationalize data science to an extent where you don't need data scientists to really develop models, machine learning models. Apart from the issue of overfitting, I found Data Robot to be a good one in terms of if you're big into machine learning and AI. So I hope that helps, Cal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Any other questions? I mean, there are quite a few people in the audience, so I'm sure that other people might have questions as well.
Hi there, it's Bryce here from South Africa. I have a question. How's it? Sameer, from what I've seen in the presentation and what I've done with light reading, I mean, data strategy reminds you of product strategy. It's not something you just lightly do. It takes a lot of time and investment. And it's not just saying, here's some facts and figures at the end. To that point, to implement a product strategy takes a lot of time and effort and skills. And often those things, are expensive and limited. So when you're a smaller company that has limited data experience, but wants to start this journey, how can you start on it without being overwhelmed and make it too expensive as well, I guess? Maybe that's the first question I'll ask.
Yeah, very good question, Bryce. I think, as I mentioned initially, it's a kind of start small, scale up fast, and then grow from there. The kind of quick win approach is always a good one for smaller companies. So most of my clients, not most of them, at one point, most of my clients were SMEs. I mean, typically between 20 to 50 million or 10 to 20 million. And you've got a tricky balance. One is you can make a lot of change and demonstrate the change a lot easier as well, because they're just smaller and it's easier to change them. At the other end, as you mentioned, they've got a limited amount of investment. So it's always a case of, okay, the first port of call is we need to fix data quality. And for that, we'll pocket this kind of budget and we'll improve the data, which means the data reporting that flows through to the organization is better, and the organization makes a better decision, and we'll start off from there. And if you then get that right and that flows through to the executive team, they will start to realize the value. I think making people, the stakeholders, realizing the value in bite-sized chunks by making, I won't say small, by making sort of significant but small changes and fixing the main problem at the start is quite important. And quick wins is really, I mean, most of the projects that I do, 70% of the time I write data strategy, but within that, 30% of the recommendation is quick wins, as you saw from Google Analytics, one of those slides. So always be mindful that you have to give them something back in return so that they trust. Nobody, as you rightly say, Bryce, nobody will invest all in one go. People will invest only if they see the value in it. So they might invest, depending on the client, they might invest 20K to start with. You prove the value and they want to, they sort of scale up their investment. So yeah, proving the value by picking the main pain point that you think you can solve. And data quality is always one of those ones. Getting the reporting right is another one. Getting the even getting the visualization right and telling the story right is another one, because people want insights. Most organizations at the board level are well, data rich, information and insight poor. If you fix that aspect, and it doesn't require a lot of effort as long as your data quality is good, then those are kind of, sometimes in my experience, those are good quick wins to get them on board and get them trusted with the importance of data.
Thanks, yeah, that makes sense. And it speaks to your eat the elephant one piece at a time. Choose the best piece and taste this piece. Cool. Make the most bang for buck. Makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Perfect. Anyone else? I think maybe we ran just like 1 minute over time. So if there are no more questions, I think we can stop here. So thank you, Sameer, for the presentation. Make sure to reach out to me, as I mentioned, if you want to get a PDF copy of my book as well. And feel free to reach out to Sameer as well on LinkedIn or DataMonet's website. And as I mentioned, we're going to have a very busy rest of the year. Now it's obviously the summer, but we're planning to organize more events on topics like data strategy, data maturity, also other themes in emerging tech like the metaverse and NFTs. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this event, and yeah, hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everyone, and bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.